Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at strategic bombing in the game Global War 1914. I wanted to do this video because although it's pretty similar between the 36 game and the 14 game, there are some key differences in the way strategic bombing happens, in the way that damaging railways happen, which is not exactly strategic bombing, but we'll go through that today anyway. It wasn't as effective back in World War One because planes had just been invented, right? And of course, if you didn't have planes, you didn't need anti-aircraft guns, so they were just invented as well. So neither one of those things is going to be able to hit like they do in the 36 game. But they still can do some damage. But to be honest with you, though, strategic bombing wasn't really big in World War One. Basically, what it was people flying pretty low in airplanes and chucking handheld bombs out over the edge trying to hit something, right? Like they didn't have bomb sights to begin the war. I mean, they had some near the end of the war, but even them, they weren't accurate because it was still the pilot that was flying the plane and probably releasing the bombs as well, right? It really wasn't all that accurate. But again, you could do some bombing in the war, so we do have it in the game. You'll see how we've kind of neutered it a bit, how we've made it less effective. So let's get into it. Okay, so there's two types of strategic bombing in the game. The first type is carpet bombing, and that's when you're attacking ground units. And so you would only be able to use a strategic bomber for that. You would not be able to use the airship or the Zeppelin. I'm going to show you an example of that pretty soon, but I just wanted to go through this initial part first. The second part, the strategic bombing, that's where you're bombing enemy facilities. That you could do with the strategic bomber, which is the most effective way, or you could do it with the airship, or you could do it with the Zeppelin. Now, the reason there's a difference between the airship and the Zeppelin was the German model of the airship, and it was a little more advanced, right? Like they had developed that technology a little better, and so they are slightly better in this game, although not a great deal better. And you'll see how when I show you exactly what these things can do. But that's why there's three different types of things that can do bombing in this game, is because of the difference between the Germans and everybody else. So anyway, that's what's going to be doing the bombing in the game. Let's get to how it's done and what the numbers are. All right, let's go through the numbers for the strategic bombing and the carpet bombing. Now, carpet bombing works pretty much exactly the same way as it does with the 36 game. So you get to roll 3 dice. So you would attack a territory. Let's just take this bomber here. You would attack a territory with something in it, and then you come in with your strategic bomber, and he doesn't have a defense. Now you could do this in combination with an attack, or you could just do it by yourself. Like it could be just the carpet bombing attack. Now, if you do it in concert with a larger attack, then the strategic bombing, the carpet bombing, would only be on the first round of combat. The bomber would drop his payload, and then he would leave. And the payload would be 3d12. You're rolling at 2 or less. So you've got 3 chances to roll 2s. And you could get more than one hit, but in this case, there's only one guy in there, so you could only hit one thing on that carpet bombing attack, and that would be that guy that's standing there trying to duck bombs. The only way that you could stop that bomber from, or that you could defend yourself in that territory against that bomber, would be a fighter that had dogfighting technology, and that would be a fighter that was 1916 or later. In this game, we have 4 different versions of the fighter. There's the 1914 fighter that starts the game. Then there's the 1916, 1917, and 1918 fighters. In 1916, that's when they started being able to dogfight. And so you could defend yourself against that thing. But There are no anti-aircraft artillery in this game. They just didn't have it yet. There is anti-aircraft inherent on the facilities, but we don't have them in the field to defend against a ground attack. Okay. Anyway, so that is carpet bombing. So let's take a look at strategic bombing of enemy facilities, and you'll find that at 9.8.2 in the rules. The damage that they can do, I've laid the dice out here. So a strategic bomber could do 2d6 worth of damage. You would just roll those 2d6, and the total of that, the dice rolls, would be how much damage that you've inflicted upon the facility. An airship would, you would roll 1d6. You would have to roll a 1 to a 3. Like if you rolled a 4, 5, or 6, then it's a missed attack. You didn't damage anything. But a 1 to 3, like let's say you roll a 2, well, you've inflicted a damage total of 2 on that facility. And then the Zeppelin, that is a 1 to 4 damage. So you could damage it as much as a 4, and then a 5 or a 6 would be a miss if you were to roll that. So those are the numbers as far as doing damage. You do have the chance for interception, but the interception doesn't start until you get into the 1917 fighters. You remember I talked in carpet bombing about the dogfighting ability. Well, in interception, you need 17 fighter or later, because they don't have it in the 2 earlier versions of the fighters. And so I've also laid out, you see these greenish type dice here. Those are the interception numbers of all the different things. So the bomber has a interception of 1. The airship and the Zeppelin both have an interception of 1. And then the escorting fighters have an interception of 1. And the defending fighters have an interception of 1 for the 1917 fighter. But the 1918 fighter, on both sides, the attack and the defense, will have an interception value of 2. And so that is the interception value. So what would happen is you've decided, okay, I'm going to bomb a facility. You know what? Let's just set that up. All right, so here we go. Let me see. It's kind of hard to see this in the background here, but let's just take a look here. We have got a major factory in Paris. So there it is right there. Now you know it's there. Now, what'll happen is you decide who you're going into that bombing run with. Now remember, you have to be able to make it to a safe landing spot. So you can't go any further than that. In this case, we're going to take in a strategic bomber and a Zeppelin, and we're going to take in a fighter just as an escort, right? And then the French have decided, they have a couple of fighters in there. They thought, you know what, let's do it. Let's send up these fighters, see if we can stop them. So before the bombing run happens, everybody's going to roll their interception value. Let's say it's 1917 right now. So everybody rolls at 1. The Germans are going to get 3 dice at 1, and the French are going to get 2 dice at 1. And they all roll it, and it's kind of a faint hope. So let's say nobody gets a hit. You know what, let's give Germany a hit. So then you would lose 1 French fighter, okay? And then the bombing run happens. So you have a strategic bomber and you have a Zeppelin. They're going to do the bombing run on the factory. So you're going to have to roll the d6 separately, because of course you can only go to 1 to 4 on this one. The other ones, they can go right up to 6. So you would just choose which one you want to do first. Let's say you roll the Zeppelin first, right? Let's just roll that. Let's see here. So the Zeppelin rolls a 4. That's about as well as you could do. And then the the strategic bomber rolls their 2 dice. Oh, look at that. You know what? That's just cheating. Let's do that one again. The Germans weren't that good. Okay, there we go. They got 3 plus 4. So they did 7 damage on that factory. Now, the factory has an inherent anti-aircraft. Now, in the 36 game, we're used to rolling it at 3, but because they were not as good at that technology in World War I, you're going to roll that at 1. And you're going to roll two of them because you've got two targets there, right? So let's roll the two, and you missed. So those guys all fly home. The fighter flies home, and then the factory is damaged by 7. So we've got these damage things at HBG with all these numbers on them. You just pick the corresponding ones to add up to 7. Let's just go like this and say there's 7 worth of chips under there, and you put that under your factory. Now that factory is damaged. So how much can you damage a factory? Well, let me tell you. So a major factory, you can damage that up to 20. And when it is damaged, then you're not going to be able to use it until you're under 5, right? Because you can place 5 units at a major factory. So if there was 4 damage left on here, then you would be able to place 1 unit because you have 4 damage. Now, if you had, say, only 1 damage on there, you'd be able to place 4 units because you've got 4 left to get to that 5 mark of how much stuff you can put on. But that's only the major factory. If we're talking about a medium factory, any amount of damage on a medium factory, and you're not going to be able to place anything on it. So you've got to get that down to 0, the damage on the medium factory. And the maximum damage on a medium is 10. And the same thing goes with a minor factory. Any damage on that, and you won't be able to place any, but that's self-explanatory because it's only a 1 anyway, right? That you can place units at. So the maximum damage on a minor factory is 5. So like this, if you were to attack a minor factory and this is what you rolled, even though it totals 7, you would only put a 5 damage on that minor factory, and that's how much you'd have to pay it off in order to use it again. So you don't actually take money off the person. You damage the facility, whatever you're attacking, for that amount, and then for them to be able to use it again, they would have to pay that damage down. And so, the French could just decide, you know what, I'm not going to fix that factory. I've got other things I can do. I don't need my factory. It's just a decision that you'll have to make in the game. So as far as some of the other facilities go, let's just take a look at the damage that they can take. So a major shipyard could take 10 damage, and a minor shipyard, let me see, that would be 8. You could take 8 damage on a minor shipyard. And again, both of them, any amount of damage means that they're not useful, which means also that on the major factory there, you won't be able to take that extra space in the water with it because it's damaged, right? You can't use it. As far as the dockyards go, the major and the minor, so the major dockyard can take a maximum damage of 6, and a minor dockyard could take a maximum damage of 3. And as far as ports go, so a major port can take 5 damage. Let's get these dice out of here. Major port could take 5 damage, and a minor port, which is these white ones here, that can take a maximum damage of 3. So you wouldn't need to go at that with too many bombers, right, if you wanted to take that out. But I mean, I don't know why you would really want to damage a minor port anyway, right? Like there's so many of them on the board that it's probably not even a thing. Like I could see damaging this one, to stop Lend-Lease and to prevent ships from being able to go further. That might be useful, but even then, like it's not that useful in the game. More than anything, the things that you're probably going to be damaging are the shipyards, because that's where you place the ships, and the factories, because that's where you place the other units, right? So the other things that we have here, like we have a seaplane base, and you could damage one of those because it's a facility, and it can only take 1 damage. And an airship, that can take 2 damage. Now these things don't do much in the game. to be honest with you. So I don't know why you would want to damage them. I could see the seaplane base, maybe. I don't know why you would want to damage the other one, the airship base. Submarine base, a little different story. Like it's, you can take a major damage or maximum damage of 3, and that thing there will be able to build 2 submarines, right? If it's connected to a factory. So so that I could see that being something you might want to damage if there's no shipyard around that they can build their subs with. So those are the things that you can damage. You can also damage railway, but not in the manner that I've showed you. You wouldn't use air power to do that. So let's just get to railways there then. Let's talk about damaging railways. Now, in the 36 game, you use planes to damage railways. And I talked earlier in this video about how difficult it was to target things with a World War I plane. You could imagine trying to hit a railway from the air, like from a couple hundred feet in the air, even chucking basically what amounts to a hand grenade over and trying to damage a railway. Like that, it really wasn't a thing, right? I mean, you could try, but the chances of you being successful is just not worth it. Like you're better off using that plane somewhere else, and quite frankly, that hand grenade somewhere else. So we've changed the way you damage railways in this game. And of course, you're not going to be able to fly, three spaces deep into behind enemy lines to do that, because you just didn't have the air power to do that. So basically what you're going to be able to do is just damage railways that are in your within your territory, or that is adjacent to you. And I don't mean like right into the next territory. I'm talking about the rail links, because when you're damaging rail links, like what you're really doing is you're damaging the link on the border. You're not really damaging, like you look in Berlin here, you're not really damaging the railway right inside Berlin. You're damaging the links from one territory to another, right? And so that's what you're damaging. So let's just take a look at how you would do that. So there's a couple of ways that you could damage rail links. One of them is through the random events, and I'm not going to go and find all the random events that help you to damage railways, but suffice it to say that every once in a while there's a random event that if you have rolled for that one, it's going to say damage this railway in this territory, or all these railways in Russia, or whatever, right? Like you'll see that that's something that can happen. The other way though is damaging them with units. And what you can use to damage railways are any kind of infantry class unit or cavalry unit. In this case here we've got the Cossack cavalry, or a camel unit. Because those are the types of things that you would use to sabotage something. Like you wouldn't use a tank. And we did have it so you could do any ground units, but really, I mean, you wouldn't use a tank to go and find a railway and damage it, right? Or an armored car for that matter. It's just not, artillery. It's just not something you would do. We're trying to be more realistic here, right? So any type of infantry class unit or cavalry unit or camel corps unit will do. Now these things represent, like an infantry unit, I believe it represents 50,000 troops. You don't need 50,000 troops to damage one little rail link, right? So we're not going to make you use the whole infantry to attack the railway. But what we are going to do is make sure that you did have an infantry there to damage that railway, because you're going to have to take some of the guys there. Like what we don't want you to do is just say, okay, you know what, I'm damaging every single rail link in Russia. It's just not realistic that you would be able to do that. Like you had to have the manpower to do that. You had to have the manpower in those territories to do that. So all we're really asking you to do is to prove that you had guys there, and then you can damage those links. And you're going to need 1 unit per link to damage. Like let's take a look at this territory here. So it says Congress of Poland, but when you get the final map, that's actually called Congress Poland. And so there's 4 links there. There's one going in from Saxony. You've got one going in from Eastern Germany, and then you've got two going the other way. Actually, you've got three of them, don't you? You've got one going into Galicia. You've got one going or two going into Warsaw from Congress, Poland. So if you wanted to damage every single one of those links, you would need at least 4 units to do that. So let's just damage. Really, what you want to do is you want to damage the one in Germany. You can see Germany's moving in here, and so you've decided, okay, you know what? Let's pull our lines back. Let's go back to Warsaw. So in the meantime, you might think, okay, well, let's damage these rail links, because for one thing, like back here, you've got an armored train. That armored train can go right into here to do an attack, right? So that would be one way that you could take out the armored trains from being able to attack your territory, is by damaging the adjacent links to the territory that you own there. So we'll damage these 2 links. And then if you wanted to keep that armored train from being able to attack Warsaw eventually as well, you could also damage these links on the inside. And so you could say, okay, yeah, let's damage those ones as well. So there you go. You can do that. Now you would do that on your combat movement phase. So on your combat movement, say you go, okay, I'm damaging this railway link and this one, or just one of them. I don't know how many rail links you want to damage, but basically you would say on your combat movement phase, I'm going to damage these links. Now you don't need to leave the guy there though, because just like it was technically a combat move, but you're not going to have to leave the guy there, because like I said, you need like 4 guys to damage a railway. You don't need 50,000 of them, right? But we want you to prove that you had a guy there to do that. So okay, now you can move these guys. So combat movement, I've destroyed these links here. Now you know what? Let's go down to Galicia here with these guys. These guys are all going to go down and attack Galicia, and basically that's what we've done. We know we're giving up this territory here, but for some reason we're going down to Galicia to attack that guy, and we've still got units to put on. Plus, I don't have all my units in here. Like, just for the sake of argument, that's what we're going to do. So then you resolve your combat, and then you do your non-combat movement. And in the end, basically what happened is you've damaged these right here, these 4 rail links right here on these 4 borders. So there you go. That's how you damage railways. Now, as far as max damage goes, it's half the amount of what it costs to build that railway. So here, for instance, on these 4 railways, this is normal terrain. There's no mountains, no marshes, nothing like that, right? So it costs 2 to build rail links on these spots here. So it would cost 1 to fix them. Like the Germans, if they wanted to go to Congress, Poland, now they own both sides of that link, so they can actually fix it. They wouldn't be able to fix it from where they are here, because fixing it requires you to own both sides of that rail link. But once they go in and take Congress, Poland, if they would like, they could fix that rail link, 1 IPP for this one, 1 IPP for this one. And if you were in terrain that costs 4, like here, you've got some mountain terrain over here. If you were to have to fix this rail link here, then that would cost you 2 IPP, because that would be half of what it costs to build it, right? Anyway, so that's how it works as far as the railway goes. I think that's pretty interesting to have to do it that way, and much more realistic than it would have been to have to send a strategic bomber in to do that, right? So let's just come back in a minute, and we're gonna wrap this video up. There's a couple more things that I want to mention before I sign off on this one. At the beginning of the video, I talked a little bit about how we've limited your ability to do strategic bombing in this game, just to try to be historical about it, because it wasn't very effective in World War I, and it wasn't very widespread. Like everybody, all the major powers at one time or another did do a little bit of strategic bombing, but for most it was limited. The nations that did it the most, I guess you could say, would have been Germany and Britain and France, and like they did most of the fighting in World War I, as most of the intense fighting. So the other major powers would have done a little bit of strategic bombing, but not much. Anyway, how we reflect that in our game, of course, is that we make you develop strategic bombers. They didn't exist at the beginning of the war, strategic bombers. And so you're going to have to develop that technology. Now, there's a lot of other technologies that we have as well. So, I mean, choosing that one over the other ones is, like you're going to have to see a path to victory by choosing that technology, right? So you can see how much it would be worth, like probably worth it for nobody other than the Germans or the British or the French, because they're in such close proximity with each other, right? For the other ones, I don't see it being worth developing strategic bombing technology. But you never know. Like, prove me wrong. You know what? You do what you do. If you think that it's going to be great, then just go for it, right? Anyway, so there's that. Now, if you do develop strategic bomber technology, now I showed you earlier how your airships for people other than the Germans were you got to hit on a 3 or less, right? Now, 4 or less, if you've developed strategic bomber technology, like this is a British airship. If the British develop strategic bomber technology, then their airships will also hit at 4 or less, and you would do the damage. Like if you hit a 4, then you would do 4 damage. If you hit at a 3, you do 3 damage. So that's how that works. You know what? Let's just talk a little bit about the Zeppelins as well and what they can do. Since I don't think there's another video that I'm going to do Zeppelins in, let me just set something up here. Now, as far as these Zeppelins / airships go, let's just take a look at the German Zeppelin here. And again, the only difference is that 1 to 4 versus 1 to 3 strategic bombing number. And I did talk to you about the interception value. They have the interception value of 1. So what else about them? Well, they cost 8 IPP and they can move 5 unless you've got an airship base. And that's the only thing this airship base is good for, is making their movement +1. And that's the only airship base that starts in the game, is this one here in Western Germany. Now, strategic bombing, 1 to 6, like I said. Then the other things that you can do with the Zeppelin / airship is that you can pair them with your artillery or heavy artillery or trains for a +1 attack and attrition. That's the same as you would see with a fighter, right? Or a balloon for that matter. So there's that. You could pair it +1 defense with warships and coastal artillery. So you could send him out into the water with a cruiser. Instead of the cruiser defending at 6, it would defend at 7. And that's just because they could see better, right? You've got some eyes in the sky for you. And then the last thing that it can do, and this is kind of interesting, it could transport 1 infantry to a friendly location. So obviously that would be a non-combat move, right? Like you wouldn't be able to transport him. There are no paratroopers in this game. So from here you could go 6 bases. And I don't know, like maybe you want to get him down to Africa eventually. So let me see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we go. We could go to here. So you could transport an infantry down there. And then, I don't know, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, see, even there you wouldn't be able to transport them all the way down to southern Africa where you have a territory. But, like that option is there. You could be taking them from the Western Front to the Eastern Front or whatever. Just so long as you're not using him in a combat move, like where you're dropping him off and having him attack somebody, right? Like it's definitely a non-combat move to a territory that you already own. So that's the other thing about the airship that you can do. I think it's kind of cool. It's kind of an afterthought that we threw in there because people weren't buying airships. Like I said, the strategic bombing isn't very powerful in this game. So we thought we'd give them 1 extra ability and see what you think of them. They're neat units and they're unique. I think that in this war, it was probably really the only war that they used them in. They might have used them at other times, but not really for war, right? And so, we had to put them in this game for sure. And there's only one of them that starts the game, and that's that German Zeppelin. But you can buy more. Like you can go and do some strategic bombing if you'd like. Anyway, so that's all I got for you today. So take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade and his little Zeppelin buddy out.